All right, we're going to talk about supply and demand. Now, there are a lot of jokes. Maybe that's all economists ever say. You could teach a parrot to be an economist if you just teach the parrot to say supply and demand. But we'll go in a little more detail. We'll try not to be bird brains. We start by talking about idealized markets. Even though we know that, well, actually, a lot of the world is not ideal. But to begin with, we can imagine an ideal and then move on to add more complexities. People buy and sell so many different types of goods and services, but many are extremely specialized. A movie might hire an extra to be person number 3 in a scene. They just want some kind of generic face. But then they also need to hire a star, some person who will make the movie. And often there's a very short list of possible people. Sometimes just a single actor who can take that role and make it giant. Sometimes firms buy the labor of generic people, sometimes of very particular individuals. The former are more like commodities. Many of us are selling our labor and getting wages. There's a market. Now, not too many companies are just going to want to hire any rando off the street. There are firms that hire like day laborers, and that's pretty close to commodity. Other hires go through many rounds of interviews, so a lot of markets are extremely specialized. In this class on high-value crops, we concentrate on the process by which some outputs are distinguished from commodities. Now, in creating commodities, many people have worked really hard to make them standardized, to make sure they're comparable, to make sure it's okay to ignore whatever remaining differences. That process is called commoditization, which is people creating commodities. But again, there's nothing inherent in the thing that makes it a commodity or not. It's how people view it. For instance, grocery stores buy apples as commodities. They're graded by quality, by size, by variety. But within that, they're bought in bulk. They're commodities. But when you go to the supermarket, you might carefully look over like, that one looks better. Maybe not bruised or good color or whatever. There's nothing inherent in the apples that makes them, this is a commodity or this is not. It's just one party in the transaction, the grocery store, views them as a commodity, while another party, the picky consumer, views them as a differentiated good. Now, coffee beans are an example of something that's commoditized sometimes. Contracts can specify bags of a certain grade of beans, even specify the details of the bag. It took a great deal of human ingenuity and quite a lot of lawyer billable hours to create this commodity. And I give details in the slide there. You can read through if you're interested. A corporation might want to create a homogeneous good. For example, Starbucks creates Pike Place Blend. And they work really hard to ensure that year to year, place to place, all around the world, that tastes identical. Even the beans might be sourced from different countries. But these abstract commoditized goods are useful in a lot of cases. For instance, we have coffee futures from ICE and from Brazil, the largest producer. And then the ICE exchange creates a new commodity, which is the spread between the coffee C futures and Brazil's BMF, which stands for words in Portuguese I'm not going to try to pronounce. Then they create options, the right to buy or sell at a specified price that refer to those futures contracts. One abstraction is built on another. So much of human work has this character. Sometimes you hear people say, well, it's not real, but so much of our reality is built on these shared abstractions. Now, I can go into a fancy coffee shop, buy an individualized cup of artisanal coffee where they tell me everything down to the names of the people who grew the beans. But I buy that with some green pieces of paper, another commodity that's been created by human society. An idealized commodity trading in an idealized market has some basic features. It's non-durable, so we don't have to worry about decisions about buy now, store it for later. It's a private good without externalities, so the decision by the consumer about what to do with it has no cost or benefit to others. We assume many firms could offer to sell the good, many consumers can buy it, so nobody has significant control over the price. We assume the market is small relative to other markets, so I don't have to worry too much about interdependencies. We assume quantity and quality are known and verifiable, and all transactions are enforced. So obviously there's actually nothing like that in the world quite, but some goods may come closer or be farther, so it provides a useful abstraction. If we have an ideal market for an ideal commodity, then we can draw a supply and demand curve. On the horizontal axis, we have the quantity, how much is traded. On the vertical axis, we have the price at which it is traded. Like the budget curve, we're assuming everybody pays the same price for all what they buy. There's a market price, and everybody knows it. The supply curve is the upward sloping yellow curve, and the demand curve is the downward sloping blue curve. The intersection point is Q star, P star. I picked that out because it's important. So if this were the supply and demand for olive oil, we would see that at higher prices, people would buy less of it, while they'd buy more at a lower price. Suppliers, on the other hand, would be willing to sell more if they can get a higher price, while at a lower price, they'd want to sell less. Digging a little deeper, the demand curve for the individual, this is the extra benefit gained from consuming one more good. A rational consumer would compare costs and benefits, and if the market price is below the level of consumption, then they'd choose to consume one more. Now there's likely to be diminishing marginal utility, of course. That first glass of wine in a week is, oh, that's great, that's really appreciated. Second, that's good too. The third, the fourth, oh yeah, but the amount of extra benefit is starting to decline. Compare with the cost and decide how much to consume. Rational people would consider, if I buy one more of this commodity, then I get some benefit, but it would cost me the market price. If the benefit is greater than the cost, then I should buy that one more unit. And if the benefit is not greater than the cost, then I should not buy that one more unit. As long as the benefit tends to go down as I buy more, while the cost stays constant, then eventually I'll stop buying. The individual demand curve shows how many items this person will want to purchase at a given price. That slopes downward. Then we combine all the individual demand curves to get the market demand curve. How much will be purchased by all the different people? If at a price of $25 for a bottle of wine, person A would want 3, person B would want 2, person C would want 0, etc., then the market demand is the sum of how many each person wants at a certain price. Now, it's generally understood that certain prices are more salient in people's decisions, going from 0 to 1, while other prices are more salient in going from 1 to 2 or 10 to 11, whatever. For instance, a restaurant might have a special on appetizers, which are directed at people who've already decided to eat there, but the restaurant wants to encourage them to spend a little more once they're in. While keeping the price of many of the main courses below a certain price point, that's more relevant to people deciding whether or not to eat there at all. There are a lot of complexities. We draw a simple line, but we know it's not really simple if you look deeper. People's choices about how much to demand depends on lots of additional factors, not only the price of the good. So we're simplifying. One key factor is income. A poor person might have low demand for food, but that's not because they don't want it, just they cannot afford it. Demand is how much, not just want, it's how much the person is able to buy. A person with more wealth might demand more of an item at every price, and that shifts their demand curve outward. Then there are a lot of other factors that can shift the demand curve: changing preferences, demographics, prices of related goods. For example, demand for coffee might depend on the price of milk and sugar. Then on the flip side, there's the supply curve. It's the opportunity cost of producing a certain quantity of output. If I'm running a coffee shop or serving coffee at a deli, how much more does it cost me to sell a little more coffee? I need to get more beans, either grind them there or purchase them already ground. I need more cups. I need more of each kind of milk: whole milk, soya milk, almond, oat. I need more sugar, more hot water. I got to make sure there's somebody there to make it. There are a lot of things there. But as the market price goes up, each shop is willing to sell more. And also more shops are willing to sell it at all. And in greater varieties. Not too long ago, a deli would only sell coffee. And if you ask for almond milk, get some stares. Now, more delis offer fancier options. They bought high-tech machines. Eventually, those increases in demand work up the supply chain. So if more people drink coffee, coffee growers will sell more beans. Not immediately, maybe, but in the next growing season, they'll plant more or fertilize more. If the price of fertilizer goes up, then it becomes more expensive to grow beans, and they'll be offered for sale at a higher price. That would shift the entire supply curve. But as with the demand curve, so too with the supply, there are a lot of different reasons the whole curve might shift. Worse weather might shift the supply curve inward and upward. Better weather can shift it the oppositely.